So good hydration, not only helps a player perform really, well, but it can reduce the risk of heat illness. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in hot, humid temperatures.
So there's very few things that you do at all that affect your whole body in such a profound way. So it has measurable impacts. You mentioned 15 to 20% more heat is generated. What that is all about is that I hate to be critical of the human system at all because it's very, very wonderful design. But when you are expending energy to move muscles, that point of utilizing energy and burning calories to translate that energy of from the foods and the energy or the carbohydrate or the fat and translate that into mechanical movement of protein,
Mhm.
muscles.
Mhm.
It's a very inefficient process. In other words, as you said, it's high heat producing. Actually, about only 20% of the energy that you expend goes into actually moving the muscles. The other
Mm.
80% is lost as heat. So
Mm.
your body is constantly faced with a challenge. The longer you exercise, the harder you exercise, the more heat your body has to get rid of. Sweating is an activation of your sweat glands. It's an activation of the blood vessels at your skin that cause the transfer of fluid from the blood, from the capillaries into the sweat glands. And then that water translates up to the sweat gland, to the skin surface, and it sits on your skin. Now, if it's not very humid out, in other words, if there's not a water vapor barrier, then that water sitting on your skin, these tiny little micro droplets, can evaporate.
Mhm.
And that evaporation process is actually where the heat is transferred from the blood,
Mm.
from the sweat gland or blood to the sweat gland, and then
Mm.
out to the environment. So the worst environment combination is hot, sunny, no breeze, and high humidity.
Yep.
And so,
And it's like Florida.
yeah, there you go. And the biggest driver in all that is frankly the humidity.
Yeah, it is.
Because even if you're indoors and there's no sun, if the humidity in some indoor environments is high, then you're going to be very, very inefficient in evaporating sweat. You'll still sweat a lot. So the water content of the air around you is probably the biggest factor. If you're talking tennis, I would say finish quickly. So it's the longer you're out there, the more challenging it becomes. And again, some sport environments, tennis included, especially at the professional level, where you have stadium courts that sort of acts like a bowl effect. And so you get a
Yep.
lot of heat that sits there, and you get a lot of reflective heat from the surface.
Sure.
And so
Absolutely.
you have a lot of things working against you. Um, Depending on the sport is really, what determines what you can do to stay cool. Because frankly, in sports like tennis or marathon running, and such, there's not a lot you can do. Again, you and I know tennis really well, but it's a factor in other sports too. You just need to do things like make sure that you're, again, not unduly exposing yourself to the environment, practicing too long before you go into your match or game, not standing around in the sun and the heat, all of that. Uh, Factors like getting enough sleep, being well hydrated, well nourished, can certainly help in tolerating, a hot environment for a variety of different factors. Yeah, there's two primary considerations here. It depends on what your demand is going to be. And again, there's a lot of topics we could touch on, but generally speaking, if you're going to be out there a long time and you're going to be sweating a lot, and why are you drinking in the first place? You're drinking to maintain cardiovascular stability so that your heart and everything else keeps working and metabolism keeps working, and you regulate temperature. So can you do that with just plain water? Yes, if you're not out there too long and you're not sweating too much then water's just fine, especially if you had your meals and everything beforehand, and you're well hydrated coming into that activity, water's just fine.
So speak to, because I remember talking about this when I was on the tour, some of the players, wanted to drink pickle juice or use salt tablets. So talk to that.
Yeah, again, so there are two different mechanisms that they're each addressing. The salt tablets, keeping in mind that they vary in amount of salt in them, so they're very, very different. Sometimes we're talking about players or athletes that are losing 3,000 milligrams of sodium every hour or more, sometimes more than that.
Hmm.
And so when you're looking at a salt tablet that are generally 400 to 600 milligrams of sodium, they oftentimes are not anywhere close to the amount of sodium that you actually need. So, but the other thing is too, if you just take the tablet and even if you drink it with some water, then it's more concentrated than you want it to be, and it doesn't dissolve as readily. It doesn't get into your system as readily. So if you put too much sodium at one time into your GI system, that can actually work and draw fluid the other way. So as we get into hydration or heat illness or muscle injury for that matter, I think the future is really going to be, we're going to be taking advantage of the technologies that are available to us now in the world of machine learning, artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and deep learning, neural networks, all those kinds of things, because that allows us to look at more information collectively at the same time, which is much closer to how the human body really works.